Hey, so I wanted to make more videos about applying green conscious frameworks to different fashion brands, and so I've been doing it on TikTok for a while, but I wanted to expand on it, and so hopefully this goes well and is easy to explain. The first brand I wanted to do it for is November 2047. So just some background on the brand. It was created by Masahiro Nakagawa and Azeki Lika.
この服を作ったのは中川雅弘、アゼチリカの2人。でもなんでウルトラマンだったの？
And it gained prominence in the 90s. It was originally called Bellissima, changed to November 2047. Ultimately, it was dissolved in around 2003, but it's had a massively lasting impact on fashion to this day. It's based on their vision of the future and named after Nakagawa's prophetic belief about the date of essentially resolution for all of society, which is November 2047. That's why the brand is 20471120. It's the date. The brand is inspired by all different axes of living, from toys to anime, superheroes, animals, all of the five senses, his own artwork, which becomes increasingly sensitive over time, his experiences, relationships, and beliefs about society, especially in an urban context in Tokyo. So we've established that the brand was originally Bellissima and changed to the 2047 name in 93. Masahiro Nakagawa tells Your Fashion Archive that he had a dream that on that date, in that year, a ton of people came together and said cheers to life and celebrated their memories. And by 2047, diversity and freedom of self-expression was the main mode of existing in order to focus people instead on interconnectivity and larger shared goals rather than their opportunities to establish distinctive status. So this form of collective thinking demonstrates a green conscious mindset and environmental thought because it acknowledges our shared responsibilities of stewardship and maintenance of the earth and connecting to each other. And it undermines capitalist modes of overproduction and overconsumption for individual gain. It centers us in on wielding fashion as a broader expressive tool in order to connect with one another. This isn't going to be a history video, but one of the focal points of their brand is their character and mascot, Hyoma. His design is found on a lot of the clothing items, accessories, the store, and he also had his own animations and manga designed after him and stories developed about him as the foundation of the Tokyo Recycle Project and other processes of the brand. Another benefit of Hyoma is that November 2047 was popular with young adults and teenagers in Tokyo street style, and having this accessible kind of character can introduce younger people to these more radical, transgressive ideas about individualism, distinction, and combating mass consumerism that tries to limit your identity based on novelty and their ability to produce. And then you have Hyoma, who existed as a symbol and brand extension that wasn't just about clothes, which allows people to attach the storytelling so that they can relate to the clothes and better understand it. You can buy and leave behind things based on what you see yourself in, instead of, again, buying based on novelty and production. You also have the gigantic avant-garde nature motifs and headpieces across different collections, the futuristic looking retro-futurist spacesuits, the dinosaur spine suit, the freaky dinosaur scale shoes that look really oddly realistic. By 1999, the speed of production and the demand of production that's expected in fashion kind of gets to the brand because of the, I think, focus on young people and their visions of the future and his own vision of the future. I think the only thing to do was to work towards sustainability. Contributions towards futuristic fashion design involve sustainability and making use of what we have. Characteristics of eco-friendly design expressed in Issey Miyake's fashion article I'll link below, but I've used this to talk about how you can reframe sustainability, and I wanted to talk about some of the principles that they discuss. So they talk about the emphasis on the natural and reinterpreting nature through handicrafts and nature-friendly design characteristics. I think that November 2047's constant references to nature, florals, animals, a huge aspect of green consciousness and environmentalism is confronting people with nature. And I think it seems easier said than done, but it isn't really easy, especially when people are living in cities, to remind people of nature and the impacts of environmental harm and destruction that don't just directly affect them, like smog and poor air quality. It's an essential aspect of designing in a way that works towards sustainability, because it reminds people that there's a broader world and that there's an impact on that world, especially as it relates to fashion production, which is one of the most major polluters that we have. Remember, 2024-7 is a great example of reframing through the lens of sustainability based on the emphasis on the natural.
I wanted to cite specific examples of November 2020-47 using direct references to nature in their work. So in their spring-summer 1999 runway show for Secret Flower Garden, the show opens up with a model who has a floating garment harnessed to her waist, and I think that this speaks to fashion's relationship with the body, fashion's extra vestimentary significance, and the relationship that we have between inanimate objects, our bodies, and the world around us, how our clothes interpreted when they are on our bodies or not on our bodies, and what relationships do we build with them as a result. And it immediately encourages the viewer to question our relationship with the production of fashion. Throughout the show, you see models walk with frizzy, unkempt hair, showing them in a more natural, less perfected state, like they may not have had to use hairspray or hot tools and electricity on their hair, and they look like they've been outside indulging nature. So this is the introduction to confronting the public with nature. You see this natural, simple makeup on the models, other than these kind of earthy green eyeshadows matching these flowing tops. The ruffles on the tops and on the skirts of dresses look like begonias or frilly carnations throughout the show. And when the models spin and turn, the ruffles on their skirt look like flowers that are opening. You also can see printed on the dresses and jumpsuits actual floral print, so you are directly confronting the audience with nature and reminding them of nature. The show completely revolves around green consciousness and nature, which is why it's named Secret Flower Garden. And then you have these animal character stuffed claw appendages coming out of the garments and shoes that look like claws or very natural throughout the show. So this show, I think, is a great demonstration of their commitment to confronting their audience with nature. There's also this solar looking track jacket that is actually lined with complete floral print, this kind of like crude floral drawing. And when the collection was produced, the ready-to-wear was a lot of floral printed men's tops or lined vests or lined jackets.
The next aspect of the design methodology that works towards eco-friendly design is simplicity. I don't think that that's necessarily the foundational aspects of why this brand works towards sustainability. The third one is persistence, which is like global ecological concern and public awareness.
Surely the central focal point of the brand 2047, especially as it pertains to green consciousness, is the Tokyo Recycle Project, which is this super exciting, multidimensional, several iterations long project that Masahiro Nakagawa created in order to repurpose existing clothing that people would contribute to him after he would sit with them and meet with them to critically understand what the value and histories of these clothing pieces were. And make them into new pieces and give them new life and transform them as he had to for himself. And you can see in the videos that that's what he's doing. He's having these meeting processes in order to critically understand what these clothes meant to people. And it's based on the story of the character Hiyoma that we talked about earlier. And in the story, Hiyoma starts his life in the big city. He's in Tokyo, living it up, and he thinks about his mother, and he sends his mom some money, and in response, she sends him some of his old clothes that have deep, long-lasting memories in them, and in return, he transforms them and sends them back to her. And it's kind of like Hiyoma trying to work to resolve the social collapse that happens within a big city. The intention of the Tokyo Recycle Project is for you to reconsider a life in a city and its mass consumer society, and to repurpose existing garments in response to just the general overconsumption that occurs within a city, not even just within clothing, but in order to work to resolve what he has control over resolving. I think it combats the inaction to environmental destruction, and it combats our superficial relationship with clothing in the first place. It completely undermines just buying clothes to buy clothes when you have to explain to another person the meaning of your clothes. And when they are repurposed with this level of meaning and intention and care, it creates this green conscious framework of shopping in the future. So it has a very multiplicative impact on the people who are shopping and who have the opportunity and the benefit to be able to contribute their clothes to the Tokyo Recycle Project. And he talks about how he put on an Aloha shirt and Seditionaries pants that he had, and he got overwhelmed by a ton of items in his room. And so he just painted everything completely white. And he felt that doing that brought the items back to life, including the memories that were inside of those items. And he repurposed them in that way. And this encourages him to do the Tokyo Recycle Project. He talks about how he's been able to repurpose the work of people who have passed and someone's lucky jacket. And you give new life to and rebirth these inanimate objects and, kind of create depth and life into them. It brings humanity back to all aspects of the process of buying and creating clothes.
This way, I think it works towards sustainability. Again, I think the community responsibility completely grounds people in working toward maintaining the integrity of an environment. Then the fourth one is variability. So the use of shape in design and the ability for each garment to essentially be adaptable, like transformations that each piece allows, or from a conceptual perspective. Masahiro said to, I think, Your Fashion Archive, that he's inspired by Jean-Paul Gaultier, Vivienne Westwood, Chanel, Comme des Garçons, Versace, and Margiela. This broad depth of inspirations, and I think that probably the philosophical connotation to some of the work as well, is why this brand works towards sustainability in its own way. Aesthetically, Gaultier's work is chaotic and subversive. Westwood's is punky and representation of underground style. Comme des Garçons as well, disruptive. They all exist with larger symbolic connotation.
The power of being inspired by Jean-Paul Gaultier's work is being in a position to contemplate the process of clothing making, tailoring, and design, and the ways that Gaultier is able to upend it and reconstruct it, and the consideration that we have for these master couturiers who can give us insight into the process of making clothes and all that it takes and how it affects our lives, and give us reverence for these designers. And I think that his ability to be inspired by Gaultier's work is central to his green conscious methodology and building our relationship with clothes.
Vivienne Westwood's work as well, like this punk aesthetic that works to undermine hegemonic constructions of what women's fashion could look like, rather than keeping up with and maintaining the ideas of like femininity and identity that existed in fashion. Vivienne Westwood's work completely undermined that, and in its own way worked toward people slowing down and developing their own identities. Punk aesthetics are all about like DIY and doing it yourself anyway, so
The framework for designing that underpins Rei Kawakubo's work at the House of Comme des Garçons as an inspiration for Nakagawa is also, in my opinion, a site of reframing fashion through the lens of sustainability, because it means he has to consider and care about her philosophical and political contemplations that are expressed through her work. An example of some of those expressions are 1997 Lumps and Bumps collection that completely reconfigures women's shapes through Kawakubo's design. It forces you to think more intensely about fashion and the process of getting dressed and producing clothes and our relationships with ourselves and our bodies and women as a class of people and the contexts through which they're interpreted, etc. This builds a stronger relationship with fashion than superficially signaling with disposable clothes that you've never considered. And having that as one of the inspirations for his work is significant. And I think his inspiration from the House of Margiela is similar. Margiela's work is constantly interrogating the process of producing clothes, commercialization of clothes, mass-produced clothes, and their implications, and how that shapes the way that women get dressed, reusing and reconfiguring existing objects and making them into clothes, padding on fabric or shaping the clothes you're already wearing in order to create corsetry or waist binding,
bracelets, jewelry, tucking the hair into a shirt or sweater in order to reconstruct the shape of body and dressing, etc. These are all ways of rethinking fashion in a way that builds a stronger relationship with it, in a way that, in my opinion, contributes to sustainability overall. And I think that that is what contributes to Nakagawa's methodology of design, which perpetuates his sustainable ethos. Yeah, taking inspiration from those kinds of designers and having depth of your inspiration, to me, is a way of reframing working towards sustainability, because it means that you're not just inspired to haphazardly produce clothes for no reason. There is like a foundation, a grounding, and a rooting in why you're working to design these clothes, which I think is exactly why they did the Tokyo Recycle project. I think his appreciation for collaboration is an aspect of eco-friendly design methodology. He personally loves incorporating works of art and collaborating with his friends and the people that were around him at the time. According to Aikaibu, he makes fashion a collaborative process and experience. He wanted to create a place where people could communicate properly and customers could get to know each other. So when he made the store, it's kind of awkward. That's what Masahiro said. Lika says that like the way that they set up the store was that things were, I don't want to say awkward, but it was like you kind of have to ask somebody for help if you wanted something, if you wanted to get something down, or you wanted to understand why are the clothes going on a Ferris wheel and like spinning around in a circle. You would have to ask for help, and in this way you would have to communicate with another person. And I think creating that interconnectivity and moving towards like collective relationships rather than individualistic, this is working towards eco-friendly design, because again, it reminds us that we all have a responsibility to maintain the integrity of the world, to take care of each other and not just look out for ourselves, and to move away from like capitalistic, singular, individualistic like relationships with shopping, buying, production, including the way that you engage a space. So they're using like your spatial relationship with the store as a means of connecting you with other people. And they said when the clothes move like that, I think people will be conscious of looking at clothes properly. When people are positioned to have to ask, how do you get it? Like the clothing on the carousels and on the roller coasters, it starts a conversation between the staff and the customers, they said. And I just think that that's like a brilliant way of creating a space where you're forced to interact with other people and acknowledge our connections. Okay, on freedom, Lika says, our clothes are difficult to coordinate. Most people are happy to adjust with a safety pin. Masahiro says he would cut his own clothes. He says, I think it's not the right thing to dress normally, but clothes are a product of challenge and freedom, and he encourages clothing customization. I think that this goes back to the principles of eco-friendly design in terms of adaptability, variability. So variability, clothing customization, directly hand in hand. Instead of discarding clothes that don't work for you, I think it makes the most sense to reframe them and think of them in different ways, especially as it relates to the Tokyo Recycle project. And I'm sure that that principle informs the Tokyo Recycle project. It's a way of making it this collective thing, which is what environmental work is. It's not like sustainability is not like an individual practice, like working toward it. Like the whole point is to maintain the integrity for people in the future and someone beyond ourselves. Like we're not going to live forever to see if the earth, prevails, and we still feel this responsibility to maintain the integrity of it. So yeah, that's like my conclusion on how to look at November 2047 in a green conscious, eco-friendly, reframed lens. I hope it made sense. This is going to take 300,000 years to edit. KK.